Funding for Current Conversations is provided by University of Oklahoma President's Office, University of Oklahoma Outreach, and World Literature Today. Welcome to Current Conversations. I'm R.C. Davis Indiano. Today's show was shot on location at the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Washington, D.C. in early June of 2015. We sat down with two social activists who have spent their whole adult lives trying to support the cause of social justice. The first, Dr. Sharon Washington, is an educational consultant from Berkley, California, and the second, Melvin Hall, is a lawyer who is also a member of the executive committee of the Southwest Center for Human Relations Studies. Why isn't there a higher quality national dialogue about race? I have this sense all the time that people feel the need to talk about it, but they somehow lack the vocabulary or the confidence or something. Why isn't there a better national dialogue? Let me add one other thing. I see Barack Obama all the time, who I adore. And I see him about to launch into something about race, and I see him kind of pull back. I mean, he, of anybody, could be incredibly insightful, but he kind of pulls back. What's the hesitance? Is it we don't know how to talk about race? We don't believe there's a receptivity to talking about race? What do you think is going on out there?
Well, I do think that in terms of a national conversation, and by that I'm going to assume that that's a conversation with white people, between white people and people of color around race. So there's not a long history of that, and one of the reasons is that white people usually have a discomfort with talking about race. But among communities of color, particularly within communities, there are conversations nationally happening about race all the time, every day.
Yeah.
They are occurring. They occur in homes, and for children who come up in, Latino communities or Black communities, they're having those racial conversations early and often. For myself, I remember probably having them before I hit kindergarten, because I understood what I was supposed to do when I got into a predominantly white situation.
Would more national leadership help, people modeling, talking across communities, establishing a vocabulary, establishing assumptions? I mean, it's got to be something lacking there, because that, like you say, it happens within communities. There are those discussions, but maybe not nearly enough across communities.
I think across communities, but I also think even within communities. I think that it would be important when I think about some of my white students when they've talked about their own sort of conversations they had around the dinner table, or not having them. They said, my family never talked about it, is what they would tell me. They said, so when I'm in your class, it is very uncomfortable, and it's a new situation for me. And so I don't have the vocabulary, and what happens is that I would have white students and Puerto Rican students and Black students all in the same classroom. And the white students would say, but this is my first conversation about race, let alone with somebody who's of a different racial background. And for the other students, that wasn't the case. They'd been having the conversation since they were 5, so by the time they got to college, they were like, I'm used to having them within my family, within our larger community, and now what does it mean to have more of the conversations with white people might in fact be newer, but they still have a comfort with talking about race. And so I think that the national leadership that has to happen actually has to start at multiple levels at the same time. I think we need to see white folks who are in positions of authority and influence having these conversations and modeling having them with other white people, whether or not people of color are around. I also think that we need to have families doing that as well. But President Obama is in a particular situation that is challenging.
Yeah.
So that if he brings the conversation up, people might assume that, well, it's just because he's Black, or he is got a biased, or he's vested in this interest.
Or if he were not president, he could be such a national leader. I think the constraints of the presidency really are very difficult for him.
It's hard for any person of color to generate and start conversations around race across racial lines with white people.
Yeah.
It's very different when white people are generating conversation and starting that, initiating that.
Yeah. Speaking of starting conversations, you've done that all your life. Yeah. You've been a critic of race, an advocate on behalf of important causes related to social justice. You've really given your life to to what you do. Was there a single event or a series of events that maybe crystallized the need to do the kind of work you did at that moment you signed on? I mean, how did this commitment come about?
I don't have a sense of, oh, I'm signing on. It really felt like wanting to have a sense of making a difference in terms of fairness.
Did you always feel that then?
I grew up thinking about fairness very early, and some of it has to do with the fact that I'm an identical twin. And my mother was adamant about making sure that neither one of us ever had more than the other. Or if one of us had to, our earliest lessons about sharing were about chewing gum, is what stands out in my mind. So she would say, I have a piece of gum for you and your sister to split. One of you will split it and the other one gets to choose first. So we got really clear about how to measure to make sure we each got the same amount.
Did you do the deal where one cut but the other got to choose first?
Absolutely. We were not allowed to be the person to cut and choose.
Right.
So
a lot of people who are going to listen to this conversation, and I hope it will be a lot of people on public television, won't have your engagement with the things that you do, won't have your knowledge or professionalism, but they'd like to do something. And they'd like to do something that's not just busy work. They'd like to advance the good in some way. What would you say to them? What one thing could they focus on where they could do something meaningful that would push things in the right direction?
So I'm going to say more than one thing.
Okay.
But I think that they can begin to just think about, what are the issues that they care about? And particularly around race, to think about what were some of their early lessons? And what were some of those messages, and really thinking about them, and thinking not only about the messages that were told to them, because most people were given, I think, very good messages. And it's sort of, what were some of the messages that they were given that were nonverbal? For instance, they might have been told to treat everybody as though the way that you'd want to be treated, or to use the golden rule. And that everybody is the same, and sort of promoting this sense that colorblindness is actually something to strive for. And I think that if people are able to go back and say, well, is that what we're striving for? And yes, my parents always gave me that message, yet we never had anyone social in our house for a social reason that was of a different race. So what's the other message you're providing your children? And so I would get that message and I would think about, so what does that mean? To
really be open to other people and to really listen to what they have to say.
And to really think about what was the socialization you yourself received.
Right.
And what would it mean just to start a conversation with somebody in your family, with your neighbor, with your best friend. But to have those conversations and be willing to sort of do the risk-taking that it takes to get in there. And understanding where your sphere of influence is. It's going to be with your friends and family. And how can you sort of sometimes counter those things that might be unconscious? Because even my own family, that's where some of my first work was. Sort of talking to my parents, talking to my cousins, and saying, what does it mean if we use this language? What are we saying about ourselves or other Black people? Or what are we saying about people from other racial groups? Maybe they're not white. What are we saying about Latinos? And so I want to just always think about what's my sphere of influence.
I was thinking while you're talking, we don't see that modeled very much in the country. The politicians, particularly in the far right, but probably politicians across the board, because of proportional representation, gerrymandering, they don't have to speak to people that they agree with. And whatever they say, however disgusting it might be, they still get reelected because of the way things are organized. Back home and in the media, there's a kind of drift towards the right in the media where people don't have to speak outside of what they already believe or what they're comfortable with, or they know that people back home, or maybe it's a commercial thing where Fox News is projecting itself to a very conservative audience. So it doesn't help that we don't see what you're describing modeled very much nationally.
Right. And it's the need to have sort of a deep respect for each and every person. The idea of what does it mean if I really listen to what you're saying and not just sort of holding on to my own belief.
It's not just a matter of being quiet while they talk. It's really a matter of opening up, taking a chance.
Taking a chance. It's about listening. It's about sort of saying, well, how could you believe that? But instead sort of saying, well, can you tell me more about that? Because I don't understand what you're actually telling me. And really being open to listening to you. And it will change me on some level, but it doesn't change the core of who I am. And so I actually believe that it's such a benefit to actually deeply listen to people. And to hopefully that they'll do the same for you. Because it's really not about changing opinions. I mean, that's one of the things we may want to have, but it's really about gaining understanding.
What concerns me a little bit about the low quality, I would say, of the national dialogue is the kind of thing that you're describing is incredibly valuable. I think it takes a lot of practice. There are a lot of skills involved, personal skills of accessing your own feelings and being sensitive to others, et cetera. It's not something just heroically one day, one big move do. You have to practice it all the time, and I don't see that being practiced. Not in terms of public dialogue.
Right, and I think if people are doing it and they're trying it out in private, in low-risk situations, that's how you practice.
Yeah.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
It's not like you need a guidebook to say, oh, I have to do these 5 things and then I can have a conversation that really honors somebody else's sort of experiences and points of view. It's a matter of just paying attention and trying it out.
Yeah.
Because you have those kinds of conversations with people in your family. So it's actually extending it beyond that. And I'm not suggesting that everybody become family or that you have to be a friend to have these kind of conversations, because I can have these conversations with people who are not my friends. I can have them with people I work with. I can have them with people that I have just met. It doesn't matter whether or not we're friends. It's about having a deep respect for humanity.
Right. Earlier I asked you about changes in the national culture concerning race up to this point in your lifetime. Let's now roll it forward.
Okay.
Are you optimistic that you will see significant change about racial relations and social justice in your lifetime? And how strong, if you're optimistic, how strong is that optimism? How would you grade it?
So I'm very optimistic, and I do not believe that I'll see it during my lifetime. And I'm not looking for it to happen during my lifetime. I'm looking for it to happen.
Somewhere out there.
But I know that those who were working multiple generations ago for greater access to education, freedom from slavery, they couldn't imagine where we'd be right now. But it didn't stop them from working.
Right.
And so I am ever grateful that they did what they did, not knowing what it would look like in the future.
So the contribution that somebody's making, that you're making, it's got to be enough in itself, because we're not going to arrive at the goal as a culture.
No, as a culture, we will arrive at the goal.
But not in our
But it
lifetime.
may not be in my lifetime. And so I'm really looking at this as it's generations down the road.
Oh, I interviewed Gloria Steinem once, and I asked her what she first imagined in the 60s and 70s when she was doing things. And she said, I imagine we could make a difference. And I said, well, what kind of time scale? And she said, oh, I thought it would take about 100 years. And it's an answer very much like yours. It's way out there. I've got to contribute, but I won't see it.
Right, and that's 5 generations.
Yeah, yeah. What has NCORE meant to you over the years? You've been involved, you've been committed in so many ways. How has it changed you? What do you think it's contributed to the way you look at the world?
NCORE has been a professional home for me. It's a place that I return to year after year. Sometimes I'm not even sure what will I do when I get to NCORE this year, in terms of will I do a presentation, will I just not be a presenter and just really go and participate in a way where I don't have to sort of think about, oh, how am I going to figure out how to sort of think about what I'm sharing, but more think about what I'm going to be receiving. And I've been coming to NCORE. Back to what you said
before, listening and being open.
Yeah. And I've been coming to NCORE for 19 years. And I don't know when I will stop coming, but I know that it has meant the world to me. I do foresee a day where I will stop doing presentations. And that's okay, because I'm very excited about the folks who are coming in now and presenting that weren't presenting 15 years ago. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the conversation has really gone to another place, and I want to keep up, but maybe it's not going to be being in front, but actually just sort of being part of. And so that really excites me a lot. And it's given me opportunities to meet people from other institutions. And early on, it made me feel not alone.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. Really great having you on the show.
Absolutely.
Thank
Glad to
you.
be here.
Yep. From your perspective as a lawyer, as an activist for racial causes, have you seen great change in your lifetime that you would say a significant change in terms of attitudes about race nationally?
Wow. I've seen a lot of change.
Change for the good.
Change for the good. I've seen a lot of change for the good. But as a student of this civil rights era and of history, I know for a fact that with each step forward, there's typically a backlash, and that backlash is 2 steps backward. And we've seen that in a number of areas. So sometimes when we experience change, I'm looking for what's going to be the backlash. And because there's always a backlash to progress, because those who are opposed to progress, they quickly readjust, and then they fill in the spaces with new rhetoric and new rationalizations for us not to move forward.
But in terms of actual maybe respect for civil liberties, being more of a culture of possibility for racial minorities, I mean, what grade would you give the country over the last, say, 25 years?
Well, I'd have to give it a C.
Okay.
I'm more of a pessimist, certainly with the election of our first African-American president. That was a great achievement, but it was quickly followed by a backlash. The Tea Party did not exist prior to the election of Barack Obama. And then you had massive changes also in voter ID. You also had massive changes in terms of the mood of the country. So that was the backlash. So we can have progress on certain levels, but other areas, there continues to be a lot of problems. So
wouldn't you even agree that there was a concentrated effort, coordinated effort to try to contain this president as much as possible, so that later people could point and say, well, what did he do? Block him in every way possible, and then be able to say that not much was accomplished. Don't you think that?
That's true, and I think something that has countered that has been social media, which is great, because now you have individuals who through social media can correct the record. So it's real hard for people to mischaracterize the successes of this administration as a failure when it's constantly being fact-checked, constantly being updated. Right. Yeah. And so that's a good thing. That's a good thing in that, only the uninformed or those who are predisposed to not like this administration, really believe that.
Which is a lot of people, actually.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of people who are not buying it, right. and are not accepting it, and know that it's a falsity. So in that respect, I think it's great. There are always going to be detractors. There are always going to be detractors, and they're going to have successes. But I think overall, we're moving in the right direction, and I'm optimistic for the future, because those people who are opposed to progress, who are opposed to equality, who are opposed to justice and fairness for all people, they're losing. They're losing, and they know they're losing. That's the reason why they're so desperate. That's, if you corner a cat and that cat knows that its life is about to end, what is it going to do? Yeah. It's going to do whatever. It's going to say whatever. It's going to react, because it knows it's over. And that's the reason why we see all of the, focused opposition to, immigration, to gay marriage.
So some of these backward developments, you actually see kind of a positive sign. This is sort of the death struggle of some bad things, kind of struggling before they go down altogether.
That's right. One of the best comments I've heard about it is they're circling the drain.
Yeah.
It might be, 5 more years, maybe 10 more years for that rotation to complete itself.
But before it goes down, it circles real wide. It looks
That's
like,
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then it gets more concentrated as it gets,
Right.
till it disappears. It speeds up
Yeah.
as it disappears. And that's the desperation that we're seeing. So I actually view all of this stuff that's happening now as, the end days, the end of time for this type of opposition. And we can see that with gay marriage. I mean, that fight is over.
Was there a single event or a series of events in your lifetime that kind of crystallized for you the need to be an activist and work on behalf of social justice?
No, I wouldn't say there was a singular event. I would say that it was my, I give all the credit to my parents, particularly my father. I mean, I love my mother. She's the best. She's a sweetheart. But my father, who passed away a few years ago at the age of 84, I would have to attribute all to them. My father and his family, his mother and his brothers and sisters, they were actually forced out of Shreveport, Louisiana. And, it's either that or, people visit you at night, so they came up from Louisiana to first Summit, Oklahoma, then Muskogee, then ultimately to Tulsa, where I was born in Tulsa. I'm from Tulsa. So I think it's what my father went through and the sacrifice that he had to make that sort of motivated me to work on issues for my own children and the children of my contemporaries. I mean, not just my children, but all people. That old saying, Martin Luther King, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so, I just don't fight for the civil rights of African Americans or for immigrants or whoever. I mean, it's all people. I think all people deserve equal justice, equal opportunity, and that's what motivates me.
If there's one thing you could point out to them that you think is the biggest obstacle to social justice, the improvement of racial relations, one thing you could point out. These things are always more complicated than one thing.
Right,
but if there's one thing you could point out that you think really deserves attention, what would that be?
I would say to the individual, and I tell this to my class as well, is just put yourself in the position of the other person. Try to do that. When you think about someone who is being persecuted or prosecuted or treated badly, try to put yourself in their position. Try to see it from their perspective. Try to see it from the perspective of that constituency group. And I think what we do, we have a tendency to do so often to say, well, that's them, or that's someone else. You know what I mean? And we don't really feel their pain. And I think, when we transform ourselves and put ourselves in the position of someone else, then we can more appreciate and understand their difficulty. And, we mentioned the same-sex marriage issue. I mean, someone who is a heterosexual couple that wants to get married, put themselves in the position of society or culture or the law saying, you can't get married. Or put yourself in the position of someone who wants to go to a school or have a job and are told, well, because of your race or because of your sex, you can't have this job or you can't have this opportunity or you're discriminated against. I think when you do that, then that's a transformative belief system that helps people to understand others and hopefully act on that. We all have biases and prejudices and stereotypes, but when we understand how those affect us and how harmful they are, well, then we can, I think, appreciate people who are different better and therefore not respond to our stereotype.
Let me go back to NCORE one
Sure.
last time. You've been involved with it so long. How has it changed your views, maybe added to your knowledge base? What's been the impact of your involvement with NCORE all these years?
Well, I have to say that I was on the Southwest Center board at the time that NCORE was conceived. And I'm very proud to have been around the whole, I mean, this is the 28th year, and I was on the board a few years before NCORE was actually founded. And but it's changed my life. I mean, you know, in a positive way in terms of it's introduced me to new concepts, new information, research, ideas, and all of that has helped me to be a better lawyer, to be a better person, to be a better advocate. And so it's been a tremendous, impactful experience for me, and I'm just happy to be a part of it and to be able to participate in it in a very unique, intimate way as being on the board. So it's been tremendous. The knowledge that is imparted and the ideas that are imparted at this conference are tremendous, and I think NCORE has moved the dial as well, collectively, because all of the people who participate, they go back out into their respective communities and they take those ideas, and the motivation probably is the greatest thing. You know, people get motivated, they get inspired, they find out that they can make a difference in their position. And there's things that they can do, and also there's resources they can tap into to help them do it in a better way.
Melvin Hall, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm especially glad that you could join us. Be with us next time for more current conversation. Thank you for watching.